Well, there have been numerous game shows that have been fun, what have you, and there's been some that have been like, well, featuring panels and what have you, panelists. Well, I think you understand what I'm saying. Now I'm going to talk about one of them today on the wide world of game shows, and it's going to be a game where you have to guess, well, what these people, a certain person does for a living, and that would be What's My Line? Big D's Entertainment Rankings and Reviews presents Wide World of Game Shows. Greetings, my fellow YouTubers. I'm Doyle, the Big D to you. This is Big D's Entertainment Rankings and Reviews, back again with another episode of Wide World of Game Shows. This time I'm going to be bringing to you one of those panelist game shows. And I'm going to say it's why I didn't watch a whole lot, but I have respect for it. I watched a little bit of it, but for later episodes, though. But anyway, this is another one of the early types of games that was done by the legendary Mark Goodson and Bill Todman. A game where you had to guess what that person does for a living. In other words, their occupation, or should I say, line of work. Hence the name of this particular game. So now, without further ado, I bring to you What's My Line? What's My Line is a panelist game show where, well, a panelist team have to of celebrities or what have you have to guess someone's particular line of work, or maybe a mystery guess a celebrity or something like that, what they do. The show originally premiered on CBS in 1950 and has been later shown in syndication and has been tried to be revived numerous times. What's My Line originally started in black and white and then later in color. The game uses celebrity panelists to question contestants in order to determine their occupation, aka their line of work. The majority of the contestants were from the general public. However, there was one weekly celebrity mystery guest for which the panelists were blindfolded. It's one of the longest running U.S. primetime network television game shows. It originally was moderated by John Charles Daly and most frequently with regular panelists Dorothy Kilgallen, Arlene Francis, and Bennett Cerf. It went on to win 3 Emmy Awards and even a Golden Globe. Now, numerous episodes exist as Kinescope recordings, which is filming a television screen in 16mm, which was the only way moving pictures and sound from spontaneous, unscripted television shows could be preserved on a long-term basis before the digital era. Now, the show actually ran until 1967 on CBS. However, a year later, it returned in syndication, where it ran until 1975. And this version was hosted by Wally Brunner and later Larry Blyden, which is probably the one host of this game I'm familiar with, since I'd seen a little bit of that. Now then. Here's how the game starts out. It was a guessing game in which the 4 panelists attempted to determine the occupation or line of work of a guest. In the case of the famous mystery guest each week, the panel sought to determine the identity of the celebrity. Panelists were required to probe by asking only yes or no questions, excuse me. A typical episode featured 2 standard rounds, sometimes a third, and very rarely a rushed fourth, plus 1 mystery guest round. On the occasions on which there were 2 mystery guests, the first would appear usually as the first contestant. Now, for standard rounds, for the first few seasons, contestants would sign by writing their name on a chalkboard and meet the panel up close for a casual inspection, and the panel was allowed one initial wild guest. First contestant on the show was Pat Finch, a hat check girl at the Stork Club. She'd appear again on the 5th anniversary episode with the line of Chorus Girl appearing in the musical Fanny, and on the final broadcast on CBS in '67 as a guest. Began in 1955, Daly simply greeted and seated the contestant, who later met the panel at the end of the game. Additionally, starting in April of 1955, the panel stopped taking initial guesses. The contestant's line was then revealed to the studio and home audiences, and Daly would tell the panel where the contestant was salaried or self-employed, and from 1960 on, where they dealt in a product or a service. A panelist chosen by Daly would begin the game. If their question elicited a yes answer, they continued questioning. When the question was answered no, questioning passed to the next panelist and $5 was added to the prize. The amount of the prize was tallied by Daly, who flipped up to 10 cards on his desk. A contestant won the top prize of $50 by giving 10 no answers or if time ran out. With Daly flipping all the cards, as Daly occasionally noted, 10 flips and the panel, are a flop. He later explained after the show had finished its run on CBS, the maximum payout of $50 was to ensure the game was played out for enjoyment and there and could never be even the appearance of impropriety. Later in the series, Daly would throw all the cards over with increasing frequency and what have you, frequently to give a particularly interesting or worthy panelist the maximum available prize money. Evidence the prize was secondary to gameplay. So the panelists had the option of passing to the next panelist or even disqualifying themselves entirely if they somehow knew the contestant's occupation or identity. In the case of a mystery challenger before the round, they could also request a conference in which they had a short time for open discussion of ideas about occupations or lines of questioning. Yes, really something. Now, the mystery guest round, well, of it episode involved blindfolding the panel for a celebrity guest appearance. Originally called Mystery Challengers by Daly, whom the panel had to identify by name rather than occupation. In the first episode, the mystery guest was Phil Rizzuto, a New York Yankees shortstop. In the early years of the show, the questioning was the same as it was for regular contestants, but starting with the April 1955 edition, panelists were only allowed one question at a time. Mystery guests usually came from the entertainment world, either stage, screen, television, or sports, and when they came from other walks of life or were non-famous individuals whom the panel, but not the studio audience, might know, they were usually played as standard rounds. However, the panel might be blindfolded, or the contestant might sign in simply as X, depending on whether they would be known by name or sight. Well, I will say that there had been numerous mystery guests in Wyoming, ranging from John Wayne to Alfred Hitchcock to Gene Autry to even Ronald Reagan and others. The show's style is known for its attention to manners and class. In its early years, business suits and street dresses were worn by the host and panelists. But by 1953, the men normally wore black suits with bow tie. A few guests, in fact, wore a black tie, while female panelists donned formal gown and often gloves. Exceptions to this dress code were on broadcast immediately following the deaths of Fred Allen and Dorothy Kilgallen, in which the male cast members wore straight neckties and the women wore simpler dresses. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff and what have you. Now, at first it was black and white for most of its run on CBS, and then in September '66 it was colorized. But after it ended, that was it. There was also broadcast on the radio for a short time on NBC Radio Network from May to August of 1952. After that, it was then broadcast on CBS Radio, concluding in July of the following year. There's been a lot of things going on with this. Now, in 1968, the show came back for a revival in syndication. Now, the syndicated edition had two regular panelists for its entire run, with comedian Soupy Sales joining the returning Arlene Francis. Bennett Cerf appeared as a guest on an irregular basis until he died during production of the fourth season in '71. Among some of the panelists, they included Alan Alda, along with his dad, Robert, Joanna Barnes, Bert Convy, who of course would later go on to host some Goods in Time and produce games like Tattletales, and even, DeMar Goodson produced Super Password. Elaine Joyce, Jerry Orbach, Gene Rayburn, who of course hosted Match Game before it made its comeback later on, Nipsey Russell, and Gene Shalit. Unlike its predecessor, the syndicated version of the series did not emphasize formality, as the panelists did not dress in formal wear. In addition, the panelists were simply referred to by name, and only their first names were displayed in front of them. The show did manage to keep some elements of the original series intact, as the cartoon introduction used during the final two seasons on CBS was reused with new music added. The panelists also aired in the same manner as they had before with Soupy Sales, or the panelist occupying the seat farthest left when he was absent, coming out first and introducing the person sitting next to them, and continuing down the line to Arlene Francis or whoever occupied her seat while she was absent, who would then introduce the host. That practice continued until the beginning of the final season in 1974, when announcer Chet Gould began introducing the panelists and host Blyen at once, in a conventional fashion. In the syndicated run, whenever there was extra time, a special game was instituted called Who's Who. 4 members of the studio audience were lined up on stage, and their occupations were printed on cards. Each panelist had 20 seconds to take those occupation cards to the appropriate contestant, the ones who they thought had that occupation. Each time one panelist failed, the audience team won $25, and another panelist took a turn. If all 4 panelists failed, each member of the team won an additional bonus prize. The game ended when the panel was stumped, or if a panelist placed the occupations with the right contestants. If the panelists got it correct on the first try, the audience members received $5 and a year's supply of turtle wax. Let's see. Yeah, I will say it was pretty good in Miami from what I've seen. Now, the announcers, he continued, there would be, numerous ones were there, including Johnny Olson, who, of course, would later go on to be the announcer for The Price is Right when it came back in 1972, as well as the 1972 to 73 run of the spin-off to this game, I've Got a Secret. And there were a whole bunch of other announcers as well. Even Gene Wood sub-announced one episode in 1970. Well, anyway, the syndicated version lasted longer than the CBS run. The CBS run had a total of 876 episodes. The syndicated version had 1,320 episodes, which added together made it an overall total of 2,196 episodes. Anyway, after the series ended, an attempt for an eighth season did not get off the ground as not enough stations were willing to pick up the series for an additional year. So Goodson and Todman offered host Blyden, their host, the hosting position of Show Offs, a charades-based game that was being developed for ABC's daytime lineup. He accepted and shot pilot shortly after the show ended production, but he never got to host the series as he was killed in an automobile accident while traveling to Morocco just before taping began. And at the time of his death, a handful of new episodes of What's My Line had yet to air in certain markets. And by the fall of 1975, the last of these episodes had aired across the US, and comedian Bobby Van ended up hosting Show Offs. I'll talk about that and the show that kind of was similar to that, called Body Language, later on in a future episode, since they're both the same thing in ways. Now, they tried to reboot it twice and what have you. Sorry, in 1981 and 1996, but apparently they failed. Though in 2000, a pilot was shot with Harry Anderson, who most people may remember him from the original TV's version of Night Court, as well as his work on Dave's World, which was a previous hit for CBS. But unfortunately, that didn't make it off the ground. And they turned it down. Well, Survivor came along. And then in 2008, they tried to do another one, and with David Hasselhoff hosting it and playing in cooperation with Fremantle Media, which had taken over ownership of all of the Goodson Todman and Mark Goodson Productions programming. And they tried to do another one in 2014. It was shot to offer to stations in 2015, but it also failed to sell. Anywho, What's My Line? I'd still say, while I didn't watch it much, I do say it was still pretty good and what have you. There'd also be a 25th anniversary special, as well as a spin-off called That's My Line, which was hosted by the Price is Right's host, Bob Barker, which aired on CBS from 1980 to 1982. But however, despite it never has been back on the air for a reboot, there is, however, a live stage version, though, that's still going to this day. Now, you can find. Now, later on, Game Show Network aired the series. The show is actually currently showing on the Buzzer Network, I do believe. You can also find full episodes of the show on YouTube. I think you can find full episodes from both versions, the CBS and syndicated versions. So, anyway, What's My Line? I think is a pretty fun game. If I ever decide to watch it, I'll probably watch maybe the later episodes because I liked how the stage looked and what have you, and I liked its catchy little theme and what have you. Really something. But anyway, that's going to do it for this here episode of Wide World of Game Shows. But anyway, what did you think of What's My Line? You can let me know in the comments section below. If you liked the video, click the like button, subscribe, and be a part of the Big D Nation. And join me next time when I bring to you a re-review of Freddy vs. Jason. So I do hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, check out the Wide World of Game Shows episodes on these other classic game shows that were done by Goodson and Todman. In the upper left-hand corner is the episode idea on Beat the Clock. The upper right-hand corner is the episode idea on Password, as well as its many spin-offs. Or go to the bottom left-hand corner and see the episode on To Tell the Truth. In the bottom right hand corner is the button you can click to subscribe. If you like rankings and reviews on movies, TV, music, video games, etc., as well as the wide world of game shows, then I'm your guy. Thanks for watching, and Wide World of Game Shows will be back in a couple of weeks with Win, Lose, or Draw, the 50th episode of this series. So thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm the Big D saying see ya.